Today's documentary, The Nomadic Mind, Surviving the Psychological Siege. We are currently living through a psychological siege of cognitive overload that is literally rewiring our brains for failure. To survive 2026, you must adopt a scorched-earth policy toward your own distractions. Learn how nomadic retreat and relentless mobility can turn your highest pressure environments into a tactical playground for resilience. Act I, the setup, the emperor, and the empty steppe. In the year 513 BC, the most powerful man in the world stood on the banks of the Danube and stared into a void. Darius I, king of kings of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, ruler of 23 nations, had brought an army of 700,000 men to the very edge of the known world. His mission was to punish and subdue the Scythians, a nomadic people who roamed the endless grasslands north of the Black Sea. Darius had bridged the Danube with a fleet of boats lashed together, a feat of engineering that allowed his vast host to cross into a land of myth and menace. He expected a battle. He expected to find cities to sack, fields to burn, a king to capture. He expected the familiar grammar of conquest. Instead, he found only wind, grass, and a haunting, taunting silence. The Scythians did not meet him. They did not form ranks on some chosen plain. They simply vanished into the immensity of their own homeland. Darius, the master of a bureaucratic empire built on fixed points, capitals, treasuries, roads, was now adrift in a sea of grass, a tactical environment for which he had no map. This was the opening move in history's first fully documented campaign of nomadic guerrilla warfare. To understand the Scythian mind, we must first understand their world. They were not a kingdom, but a confederation of tribes, masters of the Eurasian steppe. Their lives were lived in the saddle and on the move. Their wealth was measured in herds. Their homes were felt tents on wheeled wagons. On the steppe, to stop was to die. To be predictable was to be prey. The Scythian warrior was the ultimate combined arms system of the ancient world, man and horse fused into a single entity, armed with the composite recurve bow. This weapon, crafted from layers of wood, horn, and sinew, was a marvel of biomechanics. It gave the Scythian a reach and a lethality that a foot-bound Persian infantryman could scarcely comprehend. But their true weapon was not the bow. It was the space in which they used it. Darius, encumbered by a colossal supply train and an infantry that marched at 3 miles an hour, pushed north from the Danube. He sent riders ahead, demanding the Scythian king, Idanthyrsus, to either fight or submit. The reply that came back was pure Scythian strategy distilled into words. This was the verbal equivalent of a feigned retreat. It was an invitation to chase a phantom. And Darius, baffled and infuriated, took the bait. He turned his army east, then north, then west, in a frantic, exhausting pursuit of shadows. His men consumed their supplies. The land offered nothing. The Scythians, always just out of reach, burned the grass behind them, poisoned the wells, and drove off the game. They were applying a scorched-earth policy not just to the land, but to the Persian spirit. This is the first great revelation of the Scythian strategy. Victory is not defined by holding ground, but by erasing it. By refusing the opponent's chosen game, the decisive set-piece battle, they transformed the entire theater of war into a psychological torture chamber. For Darius's army, every day became a lesson in futility. The stress was not of combat, but of its absence. Act 2. The escalation, the art of vanishing. The Scythian campaign against Darius was a symphony in 3 movements: the feigned retreat, the scorched earth, and the relentless harassment. After weeks of futile marching, Darius made a desperate gamble. He built 8 large forts, a gesture of permanence in a land that rejected it, and then pressed on. The Scythians, watching, adapted. They split their forces into 2 groups. One, led by King Idanthyrsus, continued to lead the Persian vanguard on a merry dance deeper into the wilderness. The other, a mobile detachment, circled back and, in a breathtaking display of strategic mobility, threatened the Persian line of retreat. They skirmished with the guards left at the Danube bridge, and even captured Darius's own baggage train, including his personal concubines. The critical moment came when the 2 Scythian groups finally linked up and turned to face the exhausted Persians. They arrayed themselves for battle, and Darius, his heart leaping at the prospect of finally catching his phantom, ordered his men into formation. But as the Persian lines lumbered forward, the Scythians did not charge. They did not loose a volley of arrows. Instead, they broke ranks and galloped off to one side, chasing a hare that had sprung from the grass. This single, staged, contemptuous gesture was a psychological masterstroke. It told Darius that to the Scythians, he was less of a threat than a distraction from sport. The stress of this insult, layered upon the physical deprivation, shattered the Persian command. Here lies the second great revelation. The feigned retreat is not a running away. It is a controlled dissolution of the battlefield. Modern stress researchers have a term for the physiological state of being perpetually on the receiving end of such unpredictable threats: allostatic load. We can map this directly onto the modern psychological siege. The toxic workplace, the endless notification stream, the 24/7 news cycle. These are not direct assaults. They are a form of cognitive harassment. We, like Darius, try to form a phalanx and meet them head-on, to power through the inbox, to conquer the to-do list. Dr. Emily Nagoski, a leading researcher on stress and burnout, provides the modern translation. She argues that stress is not the problem. Being stuck in stress is. The body completes the stress cycle through physical response, fight or flight. The Scythian warrior, by constantly moving, attacking, and withdrawing, was literally completing the stress cycle in real time on horseback. For us, the equivalent is strategic withdrawal, the deliberate, calculated disengagement that allows the nervous system to reset. The Scythians knew when to vanish, but they also knew when to reappear. After the hare hunting incident, they began night raids. Darius finally broke. Under cover of night, he ordered a full retreat, abandoning his sick and wounded, leaving his campfires burning to deceive the enemy. It was a rout in everything but name. The Scythians harried them all the way back to the Danube. The most powerful invasion force ever assembled had been defeated without fighting a single major battle. The Scythians had won by making war unbearable. Act 3. The Resolution. The Nomadic Mind in a Digital Age. The Persian invasion of Scythia ended not with a bang, but with an exhausted, shame-faced crossing of a river. For the Scythians, it was confirmation of a worldview. The empire is rigid, and rigidity breaks. The steppe is fluid, and fluidity endures. Their tactical legacy, however, is immortal. It flowed east to shape the strategies of the Huns, the Mongols, and the Turkic empires. But it's true, unexplored legacy is psychological. The Scythian strategy is a blueprint for cognitive and emotional resilience in an age of overwhelming, persistent pressure. We are all Darius now, in a way. We command vast armies of attention and intention, and we march them into endless digital steppes. The modern translation begins with a radical reassessment of what constitutes a battleground. The first modern tactical move is the Scythian reconnaissance, to map your own cognitive territory and identify what is truly essential. The scorched-earth policy becomes the deliberate, sometimes brutal, pruning of non-essential commitments, distractions, and drains on your attention. The feigned retreat translates to strategic disengagement. It is not quitting. It is the controlled, temporary withdrawal from the front lines of engagement to preserve strength. It is the digital Sabbath. It is the deep work block where notifications are poison wells. Dr. Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory offers a neuroscientific parallel. It describes how our autonomic nervous system has three primary states: safe and social, fight or flight, and shut down. Chronic stress traps us in a dysregulated oscillation between fight or flight and shut down, the psychological equivalent of Darius's army marching frantically and then collapsing. The Scythian strategy, through mobility and control, kept them primarily in a regulated state, able to engage and disengage at will. The modern application is to develop neuroception, the ability to detect safety and danger, and to create practices that actively promote ventral vagal states. The story of Darius and the Scythians is not a tale of primitive triumph. It is a documented case study in the failure of brute force against adaptive intelligence. We end where we began, on a vast, empty steppe. But now we see it not as a void, but as a field of possibility. The Scythians did not own the land. They were owned by its rhythms. Their victory was not in possession, but in freedom of movement. In our own minds, under extreme modern stress, we must become nomads of attention. We must learn to vanish, strategically, into the vastness of our own resilience. The ultimate victory belongs not to the one who stands firmest, but to the one who flows, adapts, and endures, who, like the Scythian archer on the horizon, remains forever just out of reach of the things that seek to break him. The Scythians left no empire, but they left an answer, etched in the winds of the steppe and in the chronicles of their foes. Sometimes, to survive the siege, you must become the open sky. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, please subscribe to our channel. We bring you fascinating documentaries on history, science, civilizations, mysteries, and the untold stories that shaped our world. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you never miss a new release. See you in the next one.